We now dive into the most important and interesting conversation on the topic AI play in advancing neuroscience and diagnostics. Please join me in welcoming our guest for this session, Dr. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay. Dr. Sanghamitra is an Indian computer scientist specializing in computational biology, a professor at the Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. It is indeed an honor to have you, ma'am, with us today. And chairing this session, we have with us Akhilesh Tuteja, Global Head, Cybersecurity, KPMG, and EC member, NASSCOM. Akhilesh is passionate about development in the area of information technology and how these can help businesses drive smart processes and effective outcomes. Glad to have you both here with us this evening. And without further ado, over to you, Akhilesh.
Thank you, Justin, for that average introduction. And I say average because that was inflated for me and deflated for Professor Sanghamitra. I think you could do justice to talk a little bit more about her. Professor Sanghamitra, welcome to this event. I can tell you one gets an opportunity very rarely to talk to someone like you on a topic which is so relevant, not just today, but more so in the future. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you about a subject which I have tried to understand a little bit more. But today is my opportunity to learn, and hopefully, as I learn more with you, we will have the opportunity to tell many more who are watching this event right now as to how fascinating this topic of computational biology is and how people like you are actually making significant strides to make our lives not just better, but healthier. So with that, Professor Sanghamitra, just a quick question. The topic of computational biology is known to some, but not to many. How do you explain this to a 10th grader?
Right. First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show, and I look forward with pleasure to our short discussion today. About computational biology, actually it is about computer science and biology and many other things coming together. So there's a lot of data, a lot of experiments going on in biology and a lot of data getting created. Now, from that data, computational biologists would like to create models, would like to learn from those data and try to explain biological phenomena, will try to predict what might happen, will try to also say that, okay, this is the model of the system, and if I tweak the model here, if something goes wrong here, what is the effect that might happen? And computational biology looks at data at variety of levels. It has like genetic data, proteomic data. So it could be sequences, it could be structures, it could be images. It could also bring in, for example, clinical data. So all together, trying to, get the data together and make models, and using those models, trying to understand what is going on, trying to make predictions. So that is what computational biology is primarily about.
Thank you. That sounds so interesting. I can tell you when I was growing up, statistics was a rather boring topic. But it's thanks to people like you, it's become a lot more interesting. And I say that the poets are in trouble these days because the poets thought that the human body is made up of just emotions and a heart and everything. And here you are, that you turned a heart into a sequence of genome and reading the data within that heart and trying to figure out saying what will happen to our body based on the trends and patterns which you see in our DNA sequence. So that's really a fascinating topic. I'm sure the poets have to move on to another topic and find something else because this is being taken over a lot more by mathematicians, scientists, and statisticians. So very happy to see the concepts of data science being applied to study our body and how it behaves and how it could potentially behave in the future so that we can make it a lot more better and healthier. One of the things which comes to my mind is that, we are living in an era where a fascinating interplay of computing technology with biotechnology is taking shape. And I remember I watched one of your videos and you publicly admitted that you didn't really like biology when you were in school, and you really got interested in this topic because one of your students actually got you interested in it. So we are happy to hear a little bit more about that, how it happened. But more importantly, what would be your advice that we catch young leaders to actually pursue some multidisciplinary sciences?
That's right. So indeed, when I was young in school, biology terrified me because I thought I had to memorize a lot of things. And I believe that is primarily a problem, probably, with our system of education, where we rely more on rote learning, and memorization, rather than actually doing hands-on things. So, if we make it more hands-on, not just those just look at some leaves and then put it in a lab book, but more than that, actually going out, actually enjoying nature, and then learning from nature. If that is how we can do it, of course, that's a major challenge because of the large sizes that we have, because of the huge population size. But if we can think about those things, because for me, just reading from the textbook and remembering things is a problem, has been a problem, is still a problem. What I really like to do is to, think things in my mind. And if I can weave a story around things, which is as usual, I mean, it's very normal, that then you remember things better. So that is why I found biology, like I had to remember so many things, I got very terrified. But then there was another problem, that those who did biology in our times often did not do mathematics, and those who did mathematics did not do biology. It was like, watertight compartments. You take either biological sciences or mathematical sciences, which has changed now, which is changing now, which has changed now. So I am sure we are going to see a lot more people in these interdisciplinary areas in the years to come, because our thought process has changed. With the general education type of things coming into play, if you look at the national education policy also these days, it is more focused on multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinary studies. So we will get people with expertise in a little more than just a single area. But it is also important, to my mind, to have a core expertise somewhere and then learn something else, because you cannot be expert in too many things. But one core expertise is important. My expertise, for example, the core expertise lies in computer science. I'm in a statistical institute. I have learned a little bit of statistics, but my core expertise is in computer science, and I've learned some statistics and a little more of biology because of the work that I do. So in the years to come, I'm sure this gap is going to be bridged.
That is so fascinating and very, very forward-looking. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm sure all our members watching us today would be looking at saying, we must develop core expertise in one area and learn to appreciate others and work with others. I have a young daughter, 10th grader, and she has the same dilemma as you, saying that, she doesn't like biology, but I'm feeling less stressed about it now. And I'll tell her the same thing, that, it doesn't matter. If you have expertise in one area, you can collaborate with many others. And at NASSCOM, we call it the future is in neurodiversity. We got to bring people who have different cognitive capabilities come together and solve the world problem, and it's impossible. And that's my message to all the people watching here as well, is that in our own organization, we need to bring different skills together. It's impossible for one person. And those people who are chief digital officer or chief data officer here, I'm sure would recognize that it's impossible for them to know everything about the organization function. So that's fascinating. I do want to deep dive a little bit, Professor, about the fascinating research you've done in the area of detecting a marker for the breast cancer. I know this is a story very close to your heart, but would you like to talk a little bit about us and see how data science was applied to make such a novel and foundational research, and how it's helping the humankind?
Right. It would be slightly difficult to explain in just a very short time, but let me try to give you an idea. So you see, we have inside the cells many different molecules which are interacting with each other. And there is data available which can actually tell me which are molecules which are at what levels, meaning how much of the molecule is there. For example, if we look at the RNA, now, if I straight away say RNA, that's it might be a little difficult for people to appreciate, but we all know that we have these chromosomes, and which is the DNA. The DNA material is there inside the chromosomes and inside the cells, inside the nucleus of the cells. And parts of this DNA, these are called genes, right? So we all know about our genes, etc. Human being typically has about 30,000 genes, of the order of 30,000 genes. Now, each gene, what does it do? Essentially, many of the genes, they produce proteins. And these proteins are not the proteins that we ingest, right? it's created inside the cells. These proteins get formed inside the cells from the genes. So genes, they have the prototype of the protein which will get created later on. And in this process of making a protein, there are molecules which get created, which are called RNA molecules. Typically, those RNA molecules which go on and produce a protein are called messenger RNAs. Now, how much messenger RNA is getting produced from a gene? There's technology to measure that. There are other small RNA molecules called microRNAs. Okay, these are small. That is why the term micro is there. MicroRNA. Okay, so these molecules, they interact with each other. And it is possible to predict through data science methods, through methods of machine learning, which molecule will interact with which other molecule. So once you are able to sort of first get biologically validated data that this molecule has interacted with some other molecule, and also you make high confidence predictions through your machine learning methods, data science methods, then you plug in all these interactions together, and now you think of, you see, you have different sets of molecules and you have interactions among them, which could be validated biologically or could also be predicted through computational methods. Now you have a network, right? You can think of molecules as nodes, small nodes, and their interactions as edges between these nodes. Now you can see the entire system as a network. And this is called a graph. And in this graph, I mean, you can use this graph to actually do important analytics and come up with, a group of such nodes which seem to be interacting with a lot of other nodes. So you can identify a subset of these nodes, meaning a subset of the molecules which seem to be affecting a large number of other molecules. All this thing is being done through computational methods, through statistical models. Okay, so once you are able to identify the small set of molecules which seem to be affecting a large number of other molecules through your graph theoretic analysis, then you look at this small set of molecules and try to see what is the information available in the literature through biological experiments about this small set of molecules. And in our case, we were looking at data coming from breast cancer patients. There's a lot of biological data which is available for researchers to use free of cost, or data can be generated in the laboratories also. So we used such data and we identified through graph theoretic methods a small set of molecules, some of which were microRNAs. I was talking of small RNA molecules called microRNAs. And we found that in breast cancer, among the small set of microRNAs which we were able to identify through computational methods, the literature had support. The literature meaning people who had done their experiments and published papers for out of, let's say, three microRNA molecules, of 2 molecules, there was enough literature support telling that these molecules were involved with breast cancer. But for one molecule, such information was not there in the literature, which was the interesting part. So this molecule could be a possible marker. You see, when you have a breast cancer patient, it is possible that, of course, there are many different steps are required to establish that this is indeed a viable marker. So if it is established, then one can actually, we do the lab tests, etc., for diagnosing diseases. That it is essentially identification of markers like these. Some people, somewhere, some researchers have identified some particular molecules which seem to be playing an important role in a particular disease. And if these are established to be viable markers, this is what is tested in the laboratories when we go for all these pathological tests. So this was one microRNA marker, which we then published, which we came up with. And in fact, later on, about 2 to 3 years later, another group independently gave evidence that this particular molecule was playing important roles in breast cancer. So that is what we essentially did, and I don't know whether I have been able to, explain, even in layman's terms, of what we have been doing.
You actually have explained, and those who are older than me, I can tell you that you can go and refer to your CBSE grade 8 book to talk a little bit about DNA, RNA, how the proteins are generated. Sorry, I'm just kidding. But I think that was a very super simplistic response. I want to take the same thing to say that if we can identify such minutest detail from the heaps of potential interactions which you do using the graph or network methods, it is super simple for us to, in our own organizations, put in the data in such neural network models or other deep learning models to identify how business outcomes could actually be produced based on such analysis. So I think the power of what you're doing is immense, and I think that the problems which business people are trying to solve seem very tiny compared to the problem which you're trying to solve. So I'm very hopeful about certain things that are happening in this particular way. But one question which I have for you is that I do see that you are working in the area of research, you do very noble causes, but when I look at the commercial world, I see there are a lot of funding is going on solving what I call the short-term commercially attractive propositions. So we've got companies like, I won't name, but they are saying, okay, if you watch this video, what is the next video which you'll watch? If you buy this product, what is the next product which you'll buy? And we are putting a lot of energy and funding. What do you think we should do as a data science community to try and become healthier before we become richer?
True. You're right. A lot of funding is going into research like the ones that you said, but that will happen. You cannot stop it from happening. That's the economics of the matter. So things will happen, and there will be another group of people who are looking into those long-range problems. So both these groups will survive, will do their own work. Funding, of course, will go to which yields result quickly, but then I think governments everywhere, even the deep industry people, they realize the importance of investing in long-term research, which doesn't yield result immediately. That is also going to happen, and people will be. There are groups of people who are doing research which they do not know what is going to, of what good it is going to be in the short run. But this sort of blue sky research is continuing. But of course, yes, there has to be a conscious level of funding which have to be reserved, because these don't yield results quickly. So, as you rightly said, one has to be conscious that those research also have to be funded, and not only take away money from everywhere else and put into those applications which yield short-term results. But I think that consciousness is there, but also because of the economics of the matter, you cannot say that, oh no, I will not fund research which are like short-term or very, very application-oriented. Both will have to happen. Both will happen. Both are happening. But for the long-term blue sky type of projects, yes, consciously some amount of money has to be reserved, and that I think only the government and big houses can afford to do that.
I'm actually happy that people like Elon Musk are also investing money. I read about a project called Neuralink, in which they are inducing a small chip in the brain of a pig and trying to figure out some of these neural gestures and see certain things. So I think there's a lot of, I would say, the growth capital going into this direction. In the interest of time, I really have a couple of important questions or requesting quick answers from you, Professor. Is when you apply data science to a complex problem, what would be your advice to all of us to say, what should we take care of? Should we focus on having the right kind of training data? Should we focus to have right kind of algos? Should we try and focus to have right kind of teams? I'm sure everything is important, but what's been your learning and advice to all of us?
First, of course, is to pose the right question. Very important to pose the right question that the data will be able to answer. And if the data, it's not possible to answer that question, then you have to design the experiments so that correct data gets generated. Data science is not a magic. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, this is not magic. It will not do everything that you want it to do. And very important is the quality of the data. Junk in, junk out, garbage in, garbage out. So you have to ensure that the data quality is correct, data is of high quality, it is correct, as far as possible, you can remove the noise, you can make adjustments for different types of artifacts that creep into the data. That is very important. Posing the right question of the data is extremely important. So you must have the right hypothesis, and then you must design the experiment in a scientific way. Meaning, you must, a researcher must think of, the statistical analysis part. What we often tend to do is, okay, I do one experiment and see that the result is okay. My earlier experiment or competing method gave 95% accuracy. My method is giving 96% accuracy. And I'm very happy, and I try to write a paper and publish. That's not how it should be. There is a very important part of statistical analysis to establish the results in a statistically significant way. So the statistics part also has to be strong and embedded in the algorithm, in the design of the study. Algorithm, of course, has to be properly chosen, because each algorithm has a requirement, has some constraints, and has some certain assumptions, and the data has to satisfy those assumptions. Suppose the algorithm works on the principle that the data is normally distributed. Normally distributed means there is one central value around which you will find a lot of the data points, and then as you go away from that central value, the number of data points that you get peters off. So if that is the way the algorithm has been designed, making that assumption, but if the data actually behaves differently, then you cannot expect that algorithm to work well. You will get a bad result, and then you throw away the algorithm. You say that this algorithm is bad. That's not the thing. You chose the wrong algorithm. So all these things together will make a successful data science project. But very important to remember, at least for the layman, is that data science is not magic. It will not solve all the problems in the world quickly or at all. So
that's very insightful, Professor. Data science is not magic, although many of us like to believe. The CEOs who are hiring data scientists certainly believe, and that's a good message. Problem is important before you look for solution was a big takeaway for me. I can tell you, you talked about the creating statistically significant outcome. For all those who are suffering from the corporate bell curve, you can use Professor Sanghamitra's argument to say that we can't apply bell curve unless we have statistical significant data. So if you were the one who got bad rating, you have got a very solid argument to go back to and say you can't apply bell curve of normal distribution because the population you're talking about is either not big enough or not well distributed. So I have several questions in my mind, but I'm conscious of time. Thank you, NASSCOM, for bringing us all here together. I have several questions about will data science create singularity? Will we have machine superintelligence more than the human intelligence? Will we have a situation where quantum computing will change some of these things at an accelerated pace? And what is the importance of ethics in computational biology? So all of those questions, unfortunately, I'm not going to get you the right answer today, but hopefully that's on the next segment. So if you really like hearing from Professor Sanghamitra and would like to have such more conversation, definitely give us your feedback on such sessions, and we will be able to bring you back with so many more experts like her. And I'm sure you enjoyed this as much as I did. I clearly am fascinated, a little bit more educated. So thank you, NASSCOM, for doing it once again. And with that, thank you, Professor, for taking your quality time for us and sharing your insights. We feel extremely delighted and lucky. And with that, back to you, Justin. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks from my end also to Mr. Akhilesh. Thanks to you for the nice conversation, and thanks to NASSCOM for organizing this. Thank you very much.
That was an astounding conversation, very intense indeed. Thank you, ma'am, and Akhilesh, for that inspirational chat. With that, we bring to a close day one of the NASSCOM Experience AI Summit 2022. We hope that you enjoyed today and are taking back loads of learning from all the interesting and insightful discussions.